So we're going to kick off with our first question, a simple and basic one, but so important that we understand this. What does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus?
It's a great question. What does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus? And I think it's a good question because what I mean by disciple or discipleship and what you mean can vary. And the modern concept that we talk about in church as discipleship can vary from what Jesus talks about as discipleship. So there's an issue that if I'm using a word and I'm using it differently to the way that Jesus maybe used it, we can find ourselves thinking that we're a disciple of Jesus, but actually we're not the kind of disciple that Jesus is looking for. I do feel that sometimes we are more like historians of Jesus than disciples of Jesus. And I think this partly comes out of the way that we do our schooling. So the way that I learnt at school was that we were all learning to become university professors until essentially we were kicked out or we opted out. So I went to school and you were to pass a test that got you to the next round and the next level, and you would carry on until you decided a PhD wasn't for you, or somebody said this is not for you and they kicked you out. And what we've done is we've created a school system that's growing academics until we essentially opt out.
So accumulating knowledge.
Yeah, it's about accumulating knowledge. And then we've placed that upon the church because we thought, well, if that's what we do at school, then that's what we must do in the church. So we turn up to church to accumulate more knowledge about Jesus. And I would say somebody who knows information about Jesus is essentially a historian. And so we've got lots of people who I think they're disciples of Jesus, but actually what they are historians of Jesus. So I want to ask the question, what does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus in the way that Jesus talked about discipleship? So if you look at discipleship from what we would say is more of a rabbinical understanding, so what did the Jewish faith understand as discipleship 2,000 years ago? And I would say that really there are three things they had in their mind. One was that you would follow a rabbi, that you would copy your rabbi, and that you would carry the passion of your rabbi. So in many ways, it's about surrender and influence. What do I mean by surrender? Or, if Jesus says, come and follow me. When he says, come and follow me, he's essentially saying, will you surrender wherever your life is going and surrender your life to go where I'm going? Will you follow me? Will you go in the direction that I'm going in? And I love it when Jesus says follow, because in my mind, I'm thinking about Jesus is ahead and I'm following him behind. But when Jesus says to the disciples, follow me, what he meant was, we're going to create a crowd and we're going to go together and I'm going to walk with you. And following Jesus meant walking side by side. It was more like a partnership with him. And I like that kind of idea. So being a disciple is, am I willing to surrender my life to Jesus, to go where Jesus is going? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, am I willing to copy? Am I willing to allow Jesus to influence me? So one of our big issues, I think, in the church is around influence. Who is influencing your life the most? Is it the media? Is it what you read? Is it what music you listen to, your friends or your family? Because we're influenced by everything. Essentially, we are discipled by everything. But are we willing for Jesus to be the primary influencer in our life? And I think that's really the crux of discipleship. Am I willing to allow Jesus to be the primary influencer over my life? So therefore, for me, discipleship is following Jesus. It's copying Jesus. And I love that little extra bit the rabbis had about catching the passion and carrying what the rabbis carried. So if you were to say, well, what did Jesus carry? He had a unique way of seeing the world. He had a unique way of seeing people, and he had a unique way of loving people. His whole ministry is wrapped up with love and passion for people. So what does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus? I would say it means following him and going where he's going, and not necessarily the plans and schemes that you have for your life. It's about copying and allowing Jesus to be that influence over your life and doing the things that Jesus did. Not what other religious people do, but what Jesus does. And then carrying this thing that Jesus carried, this passion for people, this passion for the poor, passion for healing and restoration. So for me, that is all of that stuff. That's discipleship. And it's certainly not simply just being a learner. It's actually more than just learning.
I really relate to the idea of this knowledge thing, and almost like I'm in the club, I've prayed the prayer, I'm in the club, so that's it. But the idea of realising what that looks like practically in 2018, when we have busy lives, and we look back at the Bible and it seems like everyone had all the time in the world, and it seems that way, although I'm sure they had things to do. But what can those three things look like practically for a Christian in 2018?
Okay. I would simply say this: it needs to be removed from the church. We need to stop seeing the church as the place that we do our discipleship, and we need to remove it and put it back into the world. Life is the main event. Church is just the pit stop. So in life, you look at the Gospels, where does Jesus spend most of his time? On roads, around dinner tables, not in synagogues, although he does spend a small amount of time in a synagogue. So it's about putting your faith back onto the streets, back into your workplace, and therefore in your workplace each day having those moments where we say, God, what does it look like for me today to be someone who is following Jesus with his ethics, copying Jesus in his way of life, and being passionate about the things that Jesus is passionate about in my workplace, in my school, in the playground, in the whatever, the bus stop, all of those natural and normal places. It's how do I put it there? And I think it's a mental church shift away from Sundays to the other 6 days.
I like that. I like that. Well, thank you so much, Chris. I think that is a really great and practical answer for our first question of the series. Next week, we're going to be looking at how we can get more from the Bible as Jesus' disciples. So we look forward to that. But Chris, if anyone wants to find out more as we go along, where can we direct them to?
Yeah, I'd say come visit us at wearemakingdisciples.com. We have a little website with lots of blogs and videos, and you can do some work there on your discipleship.
Brilliant. We'll speak again next week.
Thank you.